Now call to order the committee of the whole meeting for September 18th, 2023. The time is 7 p.m. Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member Matheny?
Here.
Member Wyrett?
Here.
Member McLeister?
Here.
Member Warren?
Here.
Member Shroya?
Here.
Member Wolf?
Here.
And Member Wolf?
Here.
7 present.
All right, let's start off with community and economic development. Darryl.
Thank you, Matt. We have 3 items for consideration this evening. The first is due to the diligence of our clerk, we discovered that a parcel at Walsh that we thought we had annexed was not. Paperwork was never properly submitted to the county. It goes to the theme that the administration has talked about, competent people managing your affairs. We sought this annexation, we completed it through council, and somewhere along the line, someone who was entrusted with the responsibility of following through failed. So, we're back to square one. And you have that resolution. It's part of it is that we've got to state the services that are going to be provided. That's what this piece of legislation does. And we'd like to have this done on an emergency. Ben, do you have anything to add?
No.
Administration? Mayor? Okay, then I'll have a motion to place this on the agenda for next week's council meeting as an emergency.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Item 2, we have a request from the administration to adjust the rates and fees for building and zoning permits and associated plan reviews. Now, a couple of things as we look at the list and we consider this. The first is that this is not simply raising fees. This is a true up. Some are going up, some are going down. And in addition, some of these are being calculated in a different fashion. Ben can touch on this. But it also comes to a problem that we've had here on council when it comes to rates and fees and charges. We haven't touched this since 2011. So we basically have a dozen years where it's been static. And as we're just moving through the budget process, we all know that one of the things that has not been static has been the cost of our permits and inspections. We've got it sized properly. We're delivering timely business service. We've made terrific strides in terms of customer service, online assistance, but all of these have come at a cost. So, you have in your packets the summary. Ben, do you want to hang on just a second before we get too far along here? Is there anything you want to add to this at this point while I fumble with my paperwork?
Come on. I would defer to Patrick first.
Patrick?
Yes, so we're just, we've been working on this for the better part of 8 months, all of this year, along with all the other things that we have to do. We meet with the building department, the inspectors, Ben, myself, administration, at all. And we went through these, line by line, talked about each and every one of these things, and made these adjustments. I feel that what's important for us to keep in mind, and I get this question a lot, and it's really it's really not the proper question, which is, well, why is a plumbing permit $75 here and it's or $100 here and it's $50 in Massillon? I don't know why it's $50 in Massillon, but if they choose to subsidize their building department operations with their general fund, they can certainly choose to do so. But have felt that over the years we shouldn't be in a race to the bottom of the barrel. We have to look at this as what it relates to our ability to deliver these services. And in the past, I'm sure that whatever the fees were probably objectionable because we didn't provide service. A terrible building department. But I think that we've embraced that, addressed that, have met with various folks over the years, whether they were cement contractors or vinyl siding contractors, to kind of work out arrangements where, it doesn't make sense to in these other instances. Here, though, we think that these are the appropriate cost structure for what we need to do on an ongoing basis. We're largely, built out. Some of the other communities, if you look at, areas like Alliance and Louisville, that have tremendous amounts of open ground around their community, and they can charge more for new construction there to help subsidize the existing operations for smaller things. We don't have that luxury. We're largely all built out, so most of our stuff is residential redo.
And again, I think as Ben has demonstrated with his analysis of the rental inspections, the purpose of permitting is to ensure that public safety is protected, as well as our infrastructure. We want to make sure that people are really connecting to the sanitaries. We want to make sure that our water systems are protected from backflow and contamination. We want to make sure that the individual who's installing a water heater doesn't do it in such a fashion that A, people die from carbon monoxide poisoning, or B, the house explodes and the neighboring houses are damaged or destroyed. So that's kind of, as we look at this is what differentiates areas that don't have code or have very modest code. We live in a condensed area, it's compact. We need these kinds of things to protect public health and safety. And as Patrick said, gotta pay for it.
I do have one comment, and I'd like council to consider, and administration can of course weigh in, that I'm thinking that the zoning board of appeal application and the planning commission application at $200 might be a little punitive for residential, and that maybe we could cut that in half for residential and then do $200 for commercial. Putting in a request for that reminds me of the neighbors that wanted to get permeable pavers. And even though they didn't actually go that route, to spend $200 to get that approval or to get that changed, and then we change the ordinance, I just think that might be a little much. And maybe we could have two rates there. I don't know if that would be feasible. Certainly think it would cover the costs for the planning commission and the zoning board of appeals meeting.
Administration, you have a take?
Well, as it relates to ZBO, let's start with ZBOA first. I'm of the opinion that, what we would like to go to ZBOA are really just the most earnest and serious of cases. For $75, we can spend a lot of time just having a lot of frivolous cases, I think. And I think a lot of what has gone there has been to that respect. I hear what Mr. Matheny is saying there. On the planning commission, a lot of this depends on what it is the project is that has to go to the planning commission. So most of those are, commercial applications. If we look at their agendas, have been largely that. So I don't think that the 200 is out of line. I'll take a look at it again between now and next meeting, talk with the superintendent. But let's keep in mind that the way that we run these meetings now in a much more professional way. We have court stenographer.
Well,
It's
I think you've raised a good point, is because, as we know, these have struggling for the right term. But the bottom line is, we have added expense, no matter how what might be, in our view, an insignificant issue, it nonetheless can be adjudicated, which is why we have the court stenographer. And we have go through the preparation of docket and the materials to ensure that the facts are laid out, presented, and the file's complete. I guess that's what I'm saying.
And that's why I think for the residential side, it's not as intense, it's not as strong as the commercial side. And that's why I was looking for a variance for the residential. Jamie, go
Well,
ahead.
real quick, I'd just like to weigh in, since I am the former chairman of the planning commission. I definitely get where you're coming from, not want to be as heavy-handed. I think a lot of people think that we fee them to death when it comes to building permits, which I don't necessarily think is the case. But I do agree with what Patrick was saying. I'm trying to rack my brain the number of times we had just your average residential homeowner come through planning commission, maybe once or twice in the time that I was there. I mean, so it's really not a normal occurrence. And, I think I'm okay leaving it at the 200. I mean, for the handful of times that it's actually come to the planning commission.
Then I think the opposite.
Really?
Because I think if there's one or two,
Yeah.
then why are we making them pay the 200?
Okay, fair
Go
enough.
as low as we can, for them. And if those aren't our prime, I guess, targets, if that's not really who we're concerned about, but for some reason, something happened with the way the property was zoned, or they need something, let's give them a break.
I can only think of a handful of residential ones in the last.
I mean, the one residential one that sticks in my mind is the church over here on Lindy Lane. They separate, which wasn't even a residence. They separated off the parsonage to sell. And I think there was another issue that, again, I actually think it was a St. Paul's
One at the
property.
sanctuary as well, but
But that was from a developer. So really, I don't know that I can think of any.
not very often.
Yeah,
It's rare for planning,
Yeah.
it's more common for zoning, and I
Yes.
just think that at $100 for a resident, to go up in front of them to speak their case, I think two might be a little punitive. It's a minor change.
Minor.
Let's do this.
I'm indifferent.
Let's
Yeah.
have the administration ponder this. I'll take a motion. Place this on the agenda next Monday night, first reading, with the caveat that we will come back and revisit this and possibly amend it.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Third item on the agenda, the administration continues to reclassify parcels. We have tonight for our consideration, the reclassification of 48 parcels. And if you look at your legislation, you will see that we have categorized those in 4 exhibits, A, B, C, and D. We won't run through these individually, but these are typically moving from GBA to Main Street North, GBA to Main Street North, general business to Main Street South, general business B to residential to family, general business GBA residential single residential single family small, that's R50, to Main Street Gateway South, GBA to residential single family small lot, and residential single family large lot to Main Street South Gateway. Let's take a quick peek at the exhibits. You have them in your packet. Maps up. Are there any questions about A? You'll see that the proposed is that little area where the condos are on Sherberry. David, that's up in your ward. This is a better alignment in terms of density, which we want to preserve. That's 7 units per acre. So we're pretty close there. Questions or comments? Now, we are going to send this to the planning commission. That's our end result tonight, but just in case we have any questions. Short agenda. Map B. Proposed, there's just a little touch of property. Proposed Main Street North. All Fair Oaks. Any questions about that? Okay. Map C. This is down in the southeast corner between Mississippi and Rose Lane. Any questions? Proposed Main Street South. And let's go then to Exhibit D, Map D. Any questions? Mr. McLeese, should be Main Street. Any questions?
No, looks good.
Mr. Matheny? Administration, you good? Okay. Okay, then we won't belabor it this evening. Come back to us. I'll move that we send this to the planning commission for its consideration.
Story seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That concludes our exciting
Good,
portion of the agenda.
We have the motion to move to the planning commission.
I thought I just did.
That was-
So you moved for
No, I
the,
moved to the
planning commission, we have
then
to-
we'll delay action. I'll make a motion to delay action until we receive the planning commission.
Story seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Very good. Now,
Okay. Moving on to ordinance and rules. John?
Well, this is an ordinance establishing chapter 711, yard care providers of the Code 5 ordinances of the city of North Canton. Landscaping services. Basically, this is a time. We have no set time. There's people cutting grass at 6 a.m. and cutting grass later. We want to have it from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I didn't quite understand, Ben, the 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Or was that a typo?
So if you've already, let's say you started at the property at 6:30, 7 p.m. hit, we would rather you finish at the property instead of stopping and coming back tomorrow. So
So what stops contractors from not beginning a job at 6?
Well, I think the idea, John, is that you need to finish at 7 p.m. But if you can be done by 10 p.m., we would prefer that you be done rather than come back the next day and tie up the next day. I mean, certainly this will be monitored, but I think mostly by residents. But if somebody's coming by at 6 p.m. and they're going to take down a tree, it isn't going to be done by 10 p.m. They're going to be working in the dark. And so, I mean, if we have to tweak that and come back, we will. But I think this is a great starting point. And we've had a number of complaints come through the city, throughout the whole city, on this type of operation. And many thought that there was a, like a noise ordinance that would take, this would provide some sort of code section that we could go to. But when we go to the noise ordinance and you read it carefully, I believe its intent was to deal with loud music, loud radios, partying to that kind of extent. It never really was intended to deal with this. Now, we have a separate provision in our waste hauling contract that they cannot begin before 6 a.m. and we don't want people banging around trash cans, at 5 o'clock in the morning. So
They start right at 6.
they start right at 6, preferably at your house.
Yep.
On my street.
So, and that's done by contract negotiation and that kind of thing, with that, just as an aside, I mean, if we regulate the trash hauler, Kimball has to come no earlier than 8, then your fee is gonna be higher. So, I mean, there is this give and take, but in this case, what we're saying is that, hey, there are people that, have to go to bed at a certain time, they have to get up, work early in the morning, they're trying to put children down to go to sleep for school, and you're running a tree felling service at 9, 10, 11 o'clock, as we've seen in some cases, it's completely unacceptable. So we think this was a good opportunity for us to be responsive to our constituent needs. It didn't put any, I think, real onerous burden on anybody, no fee involved. Just should be common sense, should be common courtesy. Sometimes we need a little nudge.
Would,
Hey.
go ahead, Jamie.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, would administration consider, instead of that 10 PM, looking at how daylight works through the summer months, and if the landscaper's trying to get caught up after a couple of days of rain, to just make it dusk? There's a set time every day when dusk hits, and you're not gonna be working after dusk. Do we really want a large piece of equipment in the street at night at 10 o'clock? The landscapers have their gates down and pylons up. Is it a safety concern working after dark?
Well, I don't like, a little bit of pushback. I don't care for dusk. Dusk is not defined. Dusk is a time that changes every day. And so I don't want to put a burden upon the administrative department, the code enforcement or police department to have to determine when was dusk today, when did the sun set? I understand that, it is lighter later, during the summer, but there are still folks that need to get to bed, whether it's, still light at 9 o'clock or not.
Like I said, you said it's a start.
I'd like to add, I think this is great. I talked with a couple residents several weeks ago who ran into a situation with lawnmowers early in the morning. I just had a couple questions. One, I guess second I'll add is I do like the 10 PM caveat if it means they don't have to come back. I don't want it to be like a every day till 10 o'clock, but it's clearly written in here that that's not what it is. But question that I have is I see it referencing landscaper. What about me if I get my big old, lawnmower, monster lawnmower out and start mowing my lawn at 6 o'clock in the morning?
This is for landscaping services for compensation,
Okay.
unless you're gonna pay yourself to do it.
No, I mean, maybe in beer,
Can't
but
start
not
doing
at
nothing.
6 in the morning. So, but
But, so it would be exempted there.
Okay.
You can do that. Some of us have large lawn mowing equipment.
mhm,
We could go out there and do that, but we would just say that what we find is that most people that live in a residential neighborhood have a care and concern for their neighbor.
right.
And that, I wouldn't go out, I don't go out before 9 AM to cut my grass, because I think I'm trying to be extra.
Mhm.
I got young kids that live around me and I'm not
Yep.
wanting to wake them up.
Same here.
But with a landscaping service, that's not what they
Okay.
do. They try to get to as many as they can.
Okay. So as long as you guys are comfortable with leaving it just landscapers, then I am. I just wanted to.
I am. I
Bring
would
that
not want it to be with the people.
Okay.
There's too many situations, and then that gets away from, go talk to your neighbor. We are not trying to not have you communicate with your neighbor, work this out. And then if something escalates, then we can call the police. But I'm assuming that 99% can talk to their neighbors and figure it out. And that's just courtesy, and I don't need the government mandating when I can mow.
Yeah.
I had a chance to discuss this with a family member who had a 50-year career in commercial landscaping. I said, why would somebody be mowing before 7 AM? And he said, understand that when the mowing occurs, it's done with a large commercial mower. They often hit things and throw things. And commercial landscapers like to get into places that have parking lots and get it done before the parking lot begins to fill for the business day. Minimize damage. If you look at our ordinance as proposed, it says that the residential area means any property within the city zoned as an R district or on property adjacent to an R district. So as you move up and down Main Street, we have a lot of places to get lawn service that have parking lots that are adjacent to residential areas. It would be prohibited from working on Main Street prior to 7 before business occurs at the site. So I just lay that out. That it may be problematic for the landscapers. Again, who want to get in and look. For example, I look down on South Main at the corner of Bonnet and Main Street. West side, northwest corner. There's a large office building there. A lot of grass, big parking lot. Is it a real concern? I just contacted and tell me it was, but he said, hey, this is why people do it. He said Rice's is out at the hotels before 7 down at Everhard, mowing for a reason. Because they don't want to blow grass, they don't want to blow stones, they don't want to chip up and damage cars, they want to get in and get out. So, that's could be the unintended consequence.
Would this apply to services like Asplund that come in?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I've seen them at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I can remember that a couple years ago. Yep.
People complain about that. And then I want to make sure that, so relevant land and landscaping work isn't snow removal, snow plowing, anything like that.
No.
Storms.
No, it wouldn't, this is yard care service. I don't believe that it's written to define, snow removal.
Okay.
The snow removal would be more along the lines of an emergency, could be an emergency event, 4 inches come down at 3 in the morning.
Right.
It's gotta be done when it gets
Absolutely,
when
right.
it's done.
That was my concern.
You don't really have a choice over that, but you do have a choice when your grass can be cut. And and I go up and down Main Street too. I mean, City Hall gets, we have a number of municipal buildings that are serviced by residential, we're adjacent to, maybe not City Hall, but some of the other buildings we own are adjacent to residential communities. And, they can be serviced between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. I don't see an issue with it, whether it's the building down on South Main. We have to establish some type of quality control over the type of community we want to be.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, theoretically, Patrick, your point is, this, I guess, goes to Dave's comment about sunrise and sunset, dawn and dusk. Conceivably, you could be mowing at 5:30 in the morning. Because the sun is up at 5:30.
Mm-hmm.
My deal was only for dusk.
But I would just say, again, in kind of closing, that, look, I think that you guys get the gist of it, at least with this administration. We're, willing to try it, see how it goes, come back and tweak things if needed. We're very open about that, you don't often have every scenario before you when you're passing legislation, no matter where you're passing it.
Right.
It's just the willingness to come back and say, okay, well, here's what we've learned.
Let me ask one question, like just devil's advocate. You and I were in the room, a couple of us, when we were complaining about noise at the Myers Control Power business in East Factory.
Oh, yeah.
We don't see this morphing into something that is going to expand beyond lawnmowers and tree services. You know, so the buses that are getting started and beginning to move around and, you know, the backup horns are going at 6:15 in the morning. Snow plows, as they're out working, you know, we're not gonna see some sort of general, hey, you know, you're waking me up, it's, I mean, the normal stuff that goes with urban living.
Yeah.
We're not gonna see that morph into something.
I agree, I think that there's, you know, very different circumstance there to here. This is something that is completely within your control.
Okay.
You are the property owner having the service performed on your property. The noise is gonna be emanating from your property.
Yeah.
You have the ability, even without this ordinance, to tell your landscaper, don't come before 7 AM.
Right.
But, you know, in some instances, we feel that we need to have that because either they don't want to do it and people are afraid to ask.
And candidly, we're not dealing with that many cases anymore.
No.
No, and I think, you know, a lot of these folks are, you know, I think, you know, if you deal with the Rices or you landscaping or some of the other local landscaping or even the local tree services, you know, I think because they're local, they get it.
Yeah.
They understand the trying to, you know, work within the community and meet that community standard. But, you know, so many of these places aren't from this area that come in to service this area. And they don't care. Just how many can I get done today?
Well, you know, you could have roofers, for example, start very early in the summer. That's really hot. Well,
Well, I'll make a
I'll make a motion, we place this on the agenda.
yes, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Go Browns.
Alrighty.